Learn how to create, sustain, and scale up your print-on-demand business with the latest tips, guides, and strategies to help you start selling and making money today. Welcome to the Sales on Demand Show. And here's your host, Adam Schneider.
Hi everybody, welcome back. This is the Sales on Demand Show, and I am your lovable, cuddly, but not stuffed, unfortunately, host, Adam Schneider. Today, this is episode 71, and I have titled this episode, Educate Yourself. So, I was kind of playing around with names for this episode, but the real basis of this episode is how it's a really broad topic, actually. How do you educate yourself into a really good career? Should I go to college? Should I send my kids to college or university? So I'm going to be talking a lot about, the future and how to build a secure future. So first, here's some updates. So I decided today to launch a few face masks on Etsy. I launched 5, and all I did was come up with the designs, and then I launched them on gearbubble.com. I downloaded the main image, which is what the face mask will look like when it's printed out, and then I created a listing on Etsy, wrote out one long description, and then I just copied that listing over and over, changed the title and the picture for the other mask designs that I have. So already I sold one, and those listings have only been up for a few hours. So I'm very, very hopeful about the future of selling face masks, especially when you consider that all across the world people are being basically required to wear face masks. And even if it's not required, it's something that a lot of people are doing because it does block, your breath and the moisture from your breath to a degree. And there is some evidence that it reduces the spread of viruses and, spitting on people. So I know there's a lot of controversy about how effective a mask is, but look, there's lots of people buying them out there. So as I was saying in the last episode, capitalism is about finding the needs and the wants of the market and filling them. So I don't care if you like masks or not. There's a lot of people out there who want them, so you should be selling them. Alrighty? So let's get into today's topic. So I wanted to talk about, in particular, school, and I thought I'd give you some facts about education at least in the Western Hemisphere, Canada, the US. I think this will apply in a large degree to education outside of the US. I mean, Europe is not really that much different from the US, and I'm sure, other countries. I mean, there's universities in India and Africa and Asia, and, the trend is the same across the world. More and more people are going to post-secondary school trying to basically get ahead. So the question is, how are you going to get ahead? How are you going to secure your future? Is it a job or a business or a combination of the two? So, of course, in 1940, there was only one answer to this question, and it was if you wanted to make decent money, you needed a degree. And only less than 5% of people in 1940 had a college degree. Less than 5% of adults had a college degree. And I think probably less than 50% of adults had a high school diploma, which of course now is 90%. And the number of people that nowadays that have a degree, adults, at least in the United States, is 34%. So 34% of all adults in the United States have a college degree, right? And plenty more people than that actually go to college, which is interesting. We'll talk about that in a bit here. So let's just throw some facts out there. This is the pros of going to university or college. So according to a source that I found, the average yearly wage for a degree holder, right? Average yearly wage. So this includes people who have been working for, 20 years and have lots of experience, and people that have just gotten out of school. Okay, so the average yearly wage apparently is $65,000 a year. And for non-degree holders, so I guess if you graduated high school, that the average is $35,000 per year, US dollars. Now let me throw some other facts in here. Degree holders often work for government, and government offers much higher average wages than the marketplace does for the same kind of work. So working in private security, you might make, $15 an hour, but if you're a police officer, you'll probably make $25 an hour. Although some places, I know in like Montana, some police officers are making like $9 an hour, or at least they were a few years ago. So that is interesting, but that is a fact. The average yearly wage for degree holders looks to be higher, and I think the story is the same in Canada, except the numbers are going to be higher because the Canadian dollar isn't worth quite as much as the US dollar. So if you're making US dollars, your money goes further, it buys more, depending on where you live. If you live in San Francisco, you basically need to be making $100,000 to live basically middle class lifestyle. So I have no idea why anybody wants to move to San Francisco or to Washington in general, but obviously people do. So I guess Google and all these big tech companies are there, so they're paying pretty good wages. Now, the average yearly wage is not the whole story, okay? So let's go through some other facts here that you may not realize about college and university. I'm assuming these apply generally across, many different countries, but this is straight numbers from the United States. The only numbers that I have were, of course, United States numbers. So, many students will never complete college. Okay, 33% of students who get into college do not complete their degree, which is kind of like, it's kind of like, getting engaged and you almost get married, but then, 2 days beforehand, you just decide you don't want to be married, but you already spent all the money on the wedding. All that money's gone. You don't get a refund just because you didn't get a degree. And so these people are getting out of college with no degree and a pile of student debt. And we'll talk about student debt too, which 69% of students end up with student debt because basically it's unaffordable for many people without taking on debt. And there has been a lot of controversy, let's say. There's been people who want student debt to be repudiated or forgiven, but let's be honest, that's not going to happen without a massive amount of borrowed money from the federal government. And I think the amount of student loan debt here, let me just pause and find that number for you. All right, so I've got a number here. There is $1.3 trillion of outstanding student loan debt in the U.S. It's more than the credit card debt outstanding in the U.S. And here's some things that you may already know about student debt, but it makes it more dangerous. You cannot bankrupt out of student debt, and it just never goes away. It affects 44 million people. So about 15% of people in the United States have outstanding student loans. That's 15% of every single person in the United States has student debt. And the average amount that a person graduates with is $29,000 in student debt, and it takes an average of 15 years to pay off that debt completely, right? So that is something to consider when you're looking at going to university or college. Okay, so here is something else. Every year that you spend in college is a year that you are not working. If you live to be 80 years old, probably you're working till about 65, maybe 67 if you're like really pushing it, but you're going to retire at some point. So every year of your 20s that you're not working is really a year that you're not producing anything, you're not gaining any skills, especially in an economy where, 50 years ago, technology was pretty stable, and advances, let's say 70 years ago, advancements in technology were not amazing, and you could go for 4 years to university and come out, and things hadn't changed much. But nowadays, if you go get a 4-year degree in computer science or something like that, you might as well have burned your money at the stake, because coming out of that training, you will have no skills that are current, unless you spent the last year of your training just sitting there and learning the most recent advancements in computer science, which is usually not what people do. But the truth is that most people who learn these things, they learn them on the job. So why are you spending 4 years in university to learn, computer science? Just, start working with computers. Most people that I know that, work with computers, they work remotely, they do, database stuff. I don't know what you call it. That's how, completely illiterate I am about that type of work. But my sister does that kind of thing, and she just learned it as she was working. And it's fine for her. And the great thing about that is if you learn while you're working and you find out you don't like that, you didn't waste 4 years learning something that you hate. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he just finished his ticket to become a plumber. And now he wants to go back to university and take some kind of business degree because he doesn't really enjoy plumbing. Well, it's different when you don't like a trade, because, most tradespeople spend their 4 years of educational time, they're actually working. But imagine that you did that in reverse. Imagine you took 4 years of college. Let's say you wanted to become a teacher, so it's 5 years, at least here in Canada it is. So you take 5 years of schooling, and you're probably, somewhere near $40,000 in debt. You get out, you try to find a job, it takes you a year to get a job, and you spend 2 or 3 years doing that job, and you're like, oh, I don't really like doing this. Kids are kind of gross. They're always sneezing on me, and licking their fingers, and I'm kidding. I actually like kids quite a bit, so I'm not trying to make you guys grossed out. I don't think I would want to be a teacher, knowing what I know now, but that's a lot of time spent, working in a career just to find out that you don't actually enjoy that. And here's the thing, the average person changes their career at least twice in their working life. So it's not just one career change, it's 2. This is very unusual, and we don't really know how this is going to affect the future, because this never used to be the case. People, once upon a time, 30 years ago, maybe more than 30 years ago, but it wasn't that long ago where people would find a career, they'd find a job with a company. My father-in-law worked for a mine. I don't know what he did with the mine. It wasn't, like 50 years ago. It was maybe, I think he retired 17 years ago, and then, he passed away not too long ago, but he was working not that long ago, but he had the same job for a long time in the same type of career. He retired with a pension, and got his checks every month, and he was fine with that. And when, I was looking at getting married to my wife, who it'll be almost 20 years this year that we've been married, my father-in-law was like, if you don't have a job, what's your future look like? And me, I'm sitting there like, oh yeah, I'm in college right now, and I was taking theology. So I actually do have a degree, and I have not earned so much as $5 from that degree, except that, having a degree is useful more so than not having a degree. So we'll talk about that too in a moment, because the way I got my degree was probably one of the best ways that you can get a degree. So one more thing that you need to keep in mind is that university costs are rising rapidly. In fact, they are rising much, much faster than inflation, and it is quickly becoming unsustainable to have kids going to university. And, in some places, the cost of a student in university is well over $100,000 in total costs. And there's just no way that is either sustainable or even economical. Like, you're just not getting any value for that. You're not getting $100,000 worth of future earnings out of a year of college if it's $100,000 a year. You're just not getting that. When you factor in the loss of work time and you factor in the debt and how long it takes to pay that off, you end up behind even the people who just went straight to work and are making that average $35,000, or in Canada here, I think it's more like $46,000. There's just no way that you're getting ahead. Okay? There's no way. Mathematically, it's not working out for you. Okay? And even if you get a job that you like, the chances are you're going to change your career twice in your working life. So, let's say that you're like, you know what? I have something I want to do with my life. I'm really smart. I need to go to college and see how far I can go. So I'm going to tell you what the best college degrees actually are, with the things that people have traditionally throughout history gone to university or college to actually do. And of course, these are things that basically you need to go and be educated in if you want to actually work in the field. So anything that's, if you've heard of the STEM fields, that's I believe it's science, technology, engineering, and it's either mechanical or math. You can tell I don't have a STEM degree because I don't know what STEM actually stands for. But those degrees are, no, maybe it's medical. It's got to be medical. Anyway, those degrees actually have value because there's a lot to learn. It's a regimented program that teaches you practical skills, and most of those things, they're taking already sort of inherent skills that you have. They're hard to get into, so anybody who can do math, for example, is miles ahead of me. I can do math, I just don't like math. So also, anything that has high income potential because of just the high-end nature of the work, such as law. So, obviously lawyers. And of course, the lawyer is a traditional career, and most lawyers have a law degree, which I believe is a 7-year degree. But, lawyers do make quite a bit of money, and law is a huge field where the earning potential is high. Same with business. Obviously, engineering, I think that's part of the STEM field, but education and medicine are the biggest fields. In fact, I have a source here from, I believe, Canada. I have a bunch of sources here, so let me see if I can find that. So, yes, healthcare skills and nursing, medicine, and diagnostic and treatment-related professions, such as mammography and MRI technicians. engineering and computer and information science. And, obviously, computer and information science is pretty broad. If you just want to learn how to do some basic database stuff, you do not need a degree in that. But if you're really keen on, learning how to improve computer technology, then it's more of an engineering thing than just basically punching keys in a keyboard. You have to be able to think, and you have to be able to solve math problems. It's very, very thinking intensive careers, but we need people in those areas. So, science and technology occupations. On the inverse side, anybody who has a degree in arts and humanities or social and behavioral sciences, which it does include my degree, okay? Theology is a social science degree. These people are far more likely than anyone else to work in jobs that typically only require a high school education. So, basically, if you get a bachelor degree in arts and humanities or social and behavioral sciences, which is most of the degrees that people can get nowadays, and they are the easiest ones to get into these programs, and of course many women tend to get into these bachelor degree programs, you are basically not guaranteed to get a job that's going to pay you more than a high school education. That's just a fact. Except for fields like social services where, you're usually working for the government and they require you to have a social work degree or something like that. Even then, it just doesn't pay a lot. I mean, social workers, they make less than most teachers. And it's a difficult job too, but it's not a high paying job. And I don't encourage people to get into those fields because they are pretty competitive to get into. They don't pay a lot, and typically, people work in those fields. They don't work in there for very long, and they decide they don't like it, and then they find something else to do. So that is, the college degrees that actually have the most potential and the ones that have the least potential. So let's say that you've got a kid and your kid has good potential for becoming educated and actually making it through a difficult, degree, something like medicine or engineering or something like that. How do you get through something like that without going into debt? So this is tips for becoming educated but not indebted. You don't want to be that person that has $40,000 in student debt and spent 6 years in college. Oh, I didn't mention that before. Did you know that the average person spends 6 years in college to get a 4-year degree? So here's a source from a website called the74million.org. Alarming statistics tell the story behind America's college completion crisis. Nearly a third of all college students still don't have a degree 6 years later. So I'm actually going to link to a bunch of these articles on the show notes page for you guys to take a look at it. I think it's really valuable for you to know what you're getting into while you decide you want to get an education. So here are some ways to get through college that are not expensive. So obviously in the age of COVID, online learning has become much more acceptable and easy to do. I mean, my kids have not been in a school for almost 6 months now. And nobody, the sky didn't fall. School ended in March. And because, I work out of the home, my wife does not work out of the home, she was able to supervise the kids learning at home. And you know what, even if, she was working or something like that, the kids being at home would have been fine. We could have collaborated with other people. One kid could have supervised the others. There's ways to make that work. And that's with, kids who typically don't do this kind of online education. So imagine if you were an adult, you're 18 or 19 years old, and you can sort of motivate yourself. Imagine getting your degree online or remotely with distance learning. This is becoming and should be much, much more of a big thing, and it is, of course, much cheaper and easier to complete, and is I would say it's a vastly underrated option. And I'll tell you why remote learning is so valuable is because it takes less time. Okay? You don't have to get up early in the morning, get dressed, put pants on, and then go to a school, and you don't even have to move. You can complete distance learning literally anywhere if you have an internet connection. There are some programs that require you to come and do labs or something like that, or if you're taking medicine or something like that, you've got to do hands-on training. But those are very specific things, and you can just go in and appear in person to do that. So a lot of new training in the future is going to be online a lot. I just heard this. Harvard University, which is probably the most overpaid university on planet Earth, the most overhyped educational facility ever, they are now offering online learning for 2020. You can stay at home and get a Harvard degree. However, they're still charging the same amount of money as they were, which I believe is $51,000 a semester. So you can sit there and listen to Harvard professors drone on about something. I mean, let's just call it what it is. A Harvard degree it's a brand name, right? Harvard has branded itself as being high-end degrees, and they're very choosy, and so they only accept the smartest students, so getting into Harvard is kind of the sale in itself. Like, if you get into Harvard, your education is basically irrelevant because you got into Harvard. So it proves that you're smart enough. Okay, so who cares? In today's economy, I mean, unless you want to, work for government or you want to become a politician, getting into Harvard really shouldn't matter to you. And, same with other Ivy League education. I mean, your degree, unless it comes from Harvard or one of these other Ivy League schools, a degree is a degree. So if you want to get a degree and you do it online, if you get your medical doctorate online, you are now a doctor. Who cares how you got that degree? You have a doctorate. You're allowed to practice medicine in, North America. So if you do it for half the cost of someone else, then I would say that you came out ahead, no matter what. I mean, if you're a very motivated person, you're going to learn a lot on the job, no matter what. And what matters most is how you comport yourself after your degree is over. Do you keep learning? Do you keep growing? So getting the degree really is just the first step. And, I mean, being an engineer, working in a field, it's about what you've done since your degree. The degree is just that piece of paper that sort of gets your foot in the door. So if you can get that degree without getting any debt, or maybe, 1/3 of the debt, or, you work while you're in university and college, and you take a little bit longer to do it, but you have no debt, you are still miles ahead of anyone, and you still have the piece of paper, right? So let me share with you guys what I did in order to get my degree. So the first 2 years I did full-time, and this is how most people do it. The first year but it was very inexpensive, right? So for me, it made sense. I was learning a lot, and I was learning how to be an adult. So I did the first 2 years on the campus, but, it was really cheap. It was about, per semester, it was about $2,500 for me to attend this college program, this university program. And it was fully accredited. I walked out at the door with the degree. But both my wife and I, together between us, we had only $12,000 in student debt, which we paid off in less than 4 years. And I know for a fact I could have done it without any debt whatsoever. I didn't know what I know today. So after the second year, the program became much more part-time, and it was more distance learning oriented. And the last year, the fourth year of the program, was almost entirely distance learning. So I was already working full-time. I was in the Army, so I was working full-time in the Army, and the Army even paid for some of the degree. They gave me $8,000 total to help me finish the degree. So basically I walked out with no student debt after 4 years. I basically paid it all off, and that 4 years includes the last 2 years of the degree, right? The only time I needed to borrow money was for the second year of the program. The other 2 years, I was already working, and I was able to simply, pay for the program and work at the same time, and I incurred no more debt after the second year. And half of the debt that I did get was my wife, who was also in the program. And that's how we got through. So this is what I would do in 2020 if I was going to go back to university, which, by the way, if you're already 40 years old and you're thinking of going back to university, I want you to take your head and put your hands on both sides of your head and just shake your hands back and forth, okay? Going to university at age 40 is not practical, right? You are just wasting time now. I mean, it's fine when you're 20, you don't have any skills as an adult, but there are so many ways to make money that adults will have a much easier time doing. If you're already 30 years old, you've already got so much life experience that you can put towards something that's going to earn you lots of money. You don't need to go to university. And if you already don't know what you want to do by age 30, well, chances are that going to university isn't going to help you. So anyway, if you were going to go to university, this is what I would suggest doing. Start a business while you are in college and work on that part-time. So here's a couple of things that are great. So mentoring other students, you can do high school, you can mentor high school students, you can help them with their homework and stuff like that. Make sure you charge good money for that. You can do local marketing for local businesses. And you can also do print on demand and e-commerce. And I know that, everybody says, we need some money to start with that. But if you have some time available, then you don't need very much money. And most people can get started doing print on demand with like $100. If you got $100, you can get started on Etsy. You're probably not going to get too far on Amazon if all you have is $100. But you will do fine on Etsy. You're only getting charged 20 cents for a new listing. Using GearBubble is completely free. You download the image and you simply order the product when someone else buys it from you. Etsy will pay you usually within a week, and you can keep building that profit. Don't spend that money though, okay? Don't spend that money unless you absolutely have to. Invest that money into your future. So this is the kind of thing advice that I would give to people who are looking to, if you really need to get an education, that's what I would do, okay? So to recap that, find an online learning program, something that's actually accredited in the United States. Some places are not accredited, so there's no point signing up with those places because it's not going to help you. Okay, lots of degrees are being offered remotely. Don't get a degree where you're wasting your time. So arts and humanities, look, if you want to become a really fine artist, great, okay? But if you're just getting an art degree and you don't have any plan to market that art, why? Why would you do that? You're wasting your time. And especially these degrees in communications and social science degrees, I hate to say this, but like women's studies, look, if you want to learn about women's studies, just do it do it for free. You don't need to go to university. I'm not saying that kind of education doesn't have some value to culture and society, but you don't need to pay for it. Okay, you don't need to pay for somebody to teach you that stuff. You can learn that on your own. There's so much information out there. YouTube is literally like college. Okay, there is hundreds of thousands of videos out just on YouTube. I mean, you could watch videos on how to open up an Amazon account. Open up your Amazon account, start buying, products in stores and selling them on Amazon with retail arbitrage. I've talked about that a few times. Look it up on YouTube. You'll find literally thousands of videos, and all of them are free. Okay, it's free education. So that's it for today. I am very interested to see what the future holds for me. So I'll leave you with this. If you are a dedicated person and you learn as much as you can, you will notice that opportunity is like rain. It is everywhere. And I say that as somebody who lives in a dry climate. It's been raining a lot this year. Opportunity and the potential to make a living is literally everywhere. It's around the corner, no matter where you go. And the only thing stopping you is either you lack the knowledge or you lack the motivation. Okay? There is nobody in the Western Hemisphere today who is being barred from starting a business. Okay? I mean, we've gotten past the 1968 period where black people couldn't open a business because of racism and stuff like that. And I just told you last week about black entrepreneurs who are literally taking the culture of, Black Lives Matter and using it to make money. And they're making good money. And it's gone beyond culture, and they're using capitalism to overcome these cultural barriers, which, let's face it, they did exist. There were barriers for people of color in this country, but those barriers have been blown away by the internet and all of this new technology. I mean, you, as a black person, if you want to start a business, it's never been easier for you to do that, especially in the United States and Canada, and I assume in Mexico, unless you get shot by the cartel. So that's what I got for you guys today, and hopefully that gives you some information. And I just want to leave one more thing here. If you want to get in touch with me, you want to contact me, I've been seeing some people that try to send a message to the show page on Facebook. That's not the best way to send me a message. The best way is just to find the show page or go on the website, salesondemandshow.com, leave a comment on a post or something like that, or comment on the actual Facebook page. For some reason, messages sent to a page, they're very hard to retrieve and reply to. So it's really irritating that Facebook has made that messaging system really hard to use. But anyway, that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I'm on Facebook all the time. So shoot me a message or something like that. Leave a comment, and I'll happily respond to you. That's it, guys. We'll be here next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it's going to be good. Cheers.